Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffrey Kennedy, author of epic fantasy romance, also writing as Jennifer K. Lambert. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Ah, heaven. Today is, say it with me, Friday! Woohoo! August 29th, 2025. Um, the beginning of Labor Day weekend here in the U.S. We get Monday's a holiday. Who knows? Maybe the last holiday. uh, politics. Um, yeah, I'm trying to decide if I want to say anything. I probably don't. Uh, we'll see. Maybe I'll wend my way back around. I think, actually, I am going to say, because one of the things that's been getting under my skin. And I realize that our worldwide media system is really borked, and that the images that people get are um, very curated, maybe even manipulated. I fell for one the other day. I just like skimmed it. I told a friend of mine this piece of news that I saw, and and he asked a question, so I looked it up, and then it turned out it had been debunked, and I was like, "That's what I get. That's what I get for skimming." Uh, yeah, but I've been seeing people say things. I realize that it is very fashionable, especially amongst Europeans, to talk about how stupid Americans are. Uh, it's a arguably punching up, or at least it used to be. um, but yes, there's always been this disdain that Europeans are, older countries and smarter and more sophisticated and all of these things. And whatever, I really do believe that no country is a monolith and that there's all kinds of people in every country with variations of intelligence. I've been seeing a lot of snarky remarks about how stupid Americans are and uneducated and so forth. And it's like, well, yeah, we do have stupid and uneducated people. Good thing you don't have any of those people in Europe, right? Or Canada. Canadians love uh, punching south at the US. But yeah, I've seen people saying things like, why aren't Americans out there protesting every single day? And aren't we smart enough to know how much danger we are in from a fascist government and all of this kind of thing? And it gets a little aggravating because it's like, we have a saying in the US, which is, how's the view from the cheap seats? Uh, Great line from the American president, Michael Douglas, one of those fantasies where the president is someone who uh, is actually cares about the country. But yeah, we know. And I saw some really good replies to this, trying people earnestly trying to explain, like, and I think one thing that people forget, and it's certainly easy for me to forget, is how freaking big the United States is. Okay. It's a big country and it is comprised of states, right? So, here's our little US history lesson from the very beginning, from the 13 colonies and the initial states that formed the Union after the Revolutionary War. There has always been a tension between federal rights and states' rights. Uh, and it's not to the extreme of, say, like the model of the city states of ancient Greece, but our states have quite a bit of autonomy. And whenever they show the maps, and talk about us being a red state or a blue state, some are more purple states, it's reflecting the fact that a lot of different kinds of people live in each state, but also how each state is run is different. Each state has its own set of laws. So one thing about why are we not out there protesting every day? Well, there are people who are out protesting every day. You don't see it necessarily on the news, but also, like we have people protesting out here in my little neighborhood. We have people protesting down at the Capitol building down in Santa Fe. Uh, but there is no, it is not like a country the size of Germany or France or England. We, we are spread out. We are a huge country with a huge population, but we are spread out. And I realize it's easy to forget because like I forget how big Australia is. I forget how big China is. Like I was invited to go do an appearance at China, and I thought, well, maybe I could go see this one site that I've always wanted to see. And I looked to see, like maybe I could do like a little day trip out to see it. And it would take me like a full day to get there because it's like way out in the boonies. And yeah, I mean, that's where it's a big country. Um, and so, yeah, there's a lot of awful stuff happening. But the thing is that people are resisting in countless ways. And fascinating to me politically, and I am no politician or historian, so probably other people have said this better, but it has been a frustration, this tension between federal rights and state rights, where federal laws technically override states' laws. But it is technically, these federal mandates, it's kind of the what exactly is the hammer to enforce that. So, like one thing that used to be in the past when I was a contractor for the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a federal agency that tries to tell the states how they manage their various aspects of the environment. Endangered species is one of them. Highway speeds is another. So, like I remember back in the 70s, there was a federally imposed speed limit of 55 miles per hour. And it was partly because of the gas crisis. And I mean, gas crisis, I want to put that in quotation marks because I'm not sure how much of that was real. Uh, but like if you drive slower, you burn less gas. It was considered to be, I don't know, safer and this kind of thing. Well, the western states, which is where I live, I lived in Colorado at the time where I grew up, one of the big square states out west. And in Colorado and other western states, 55 miles an hour is dead slow on a big empty interstate and when you have hours to drive. The joke in Texas is that if you go on a road trip, if you live in Texas and go on a road trip, the first day is getting out of Texas, which is not wrong. I mean, Texas is enormous. So, what the feds did was they withheld highway funding to get the states to capitulate to the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit because they couldn't make them do it. And that's kind of where we are at this point in history, is that Trump is trying to figure out how to make states capitulate to his immigration policies, to allowing these thugs that call themselves ICE to go in and grab people pretty much willy-nilly at willy. Uh, and so he's using the National Guard to as like his own private army to try to enforce this, but it actually doesn't work. I mean, it's heinous that it's come to this. Everybody predicted it was come to this. It's funny because I did see a thing where somebody said, at what point did you realize how bad things were going to get? Like at what event of Trump's instigation did you realize? And I didn't answer because I really do try not to answer everything on the internet. But I would have said on the morning after the election. when I saw that he had really been elected for a second time. And I I knew, I mean, we predicted everybody. It wasn't freaking hard to predict because he said what he was going to do. And Project 2025 said what they were going to do. So the amazing thing is that there's anybody who is surprised. It's like this is all absolutely on the agenda. But what's interesting is seeing how what was frustrating to me as someone who worked for Environmental Protection Agency about trying to get states to capitulate to federal laws on environmental protection. Like Wyoming was a notable one with wolves. Wolves were an endangered species. People in Wyoming wanted to be able to kill wolves at will. There was still a state law saying that you did not have to have a license to kill a predator. So any animal that was a predator could be shot on sight. And they would say, we don't care if the federal government says that it's a law that they're an endangered species. This is our state, this is our land, and we don't have to do what the feds say. And so it's interesting because the Republicans have long positioned themselves as the party of small government, right? That they don't want federal law imposing on individual freedom on states. So Wyoming has always been a very conservative Republican place. And that was a long held tension. Well, what's fascinating now that the Republicans have abandoned all pretense of wanting small government, because that's not really what they wanted. They just wanted to be able to do what they wanted to do. And Trump trying to impose authoritarian law with military might on states, that actually it's turning out what's saving us is states' rights, because the states don't necessarily have to do everything the feds say. And I think that this is really different from other countries. I'm not super familiar with how other countries work. So, mea culpa, and correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to know. But um, one thing that is great about living in New Mexico is that our state government is really good and is working hard to protect the citizens of New Mexico. So this sort of comes back to what I started with people, saying how terrible things are, and all the things that are happening. Well, we're not seeing it here, which is not to say that I'm not super concerned about it happening in other places. But we still have the right to abortion in New Mexico. We still have the right to birth control. We still have all kinds of things that are protecting us. Um, Recreational marijuana is legal here, and our governor took some of the immense revenues the state's gotten from that and gave every person living below a certain income level a bonus from that money, which is what should happen. So it's the macrocosm versus the microcosm, and yeah, the whole thing of how's the view from the cheap seats. I get that people are very upset and frustrated about what's happening here, but to imagine that we are not equally upset and frustrated, and that there aren't very smart, intelligent, educated people here doing all kinds of things to resist, and it's resistance through the courts, through the laws. Our governor here in New Mexico activated the National Guard to combat uh, the heroin gangs in Espanola, I believe was the official line. But the clever thing about this is, because everyone was at first kind of mystified, because it's like, well, we've always known that there's a problem with heroin sales, and we're not perfect, nobody's perfect. But why the sudden interest that we want National Guard? Well, if our National Guard is activated, then the feds can't call them up. So it's like, oh, sorry, our state's already activated the National Guard. You're going to have to go elsewhere, and them's the rules, right? So you use the rules to fight. Anyway, I've spent 15 minutes talking about this, and I didn't really mean to, but yeah, that's stuff that's been on my mind. None of us are safe, of course, but please don't think that we're not fighting, fighting tooth and nail, and donating, funding the people and organizations who are doing things, which doesn't make for a great hot take on social media. So here I am. I'm still working on this revision. I am 86% of the way through it. I got a little nudgy email yesterday from my editor's assistant saying no pressure, but what did I think my delivery would be? And I kind of wanted to say, if you all would stop giving me additional dev edits, would finish a lot faster. But I appreciate the dev/devi edits, developmental. Thanks to all of you who sent me suggestions for someone to do my social media. I'm very excited about moving this forward. Special thanks to John Barr. I am going to contact the person you suggested, so hopefully that will work out great. I haven't done it yet, but I will today. And yeah, so revision of Among the Thorns. I just have to rewrite the ending at this point. Because I'm changing the ending, I slowed down the last couple of days because I had to change a lot of stuff that was building up and pointing to the ending. Yeah, if any of you ever think that all you have to do is like chop off the last couple chapters and write new ones, that's not how it works, right? Because uh, the story flows to the ending. The ending grows out of the rest of the book. So you can't just change the ending. You have to change everything that leads up to the ending. Uh, and this sort of takes me back to, it's not exactly a pet peeve, but I always roll my eyes a little bit when somebody says that they see the ending coming, when a reader is like, oh, well, I thought the ending was very predictable. I absolutely saw it coming, even the twist. And it's like, well, that's great. You're a good reader, paying attention. But also, you saw it because the author pointed you to it. That was actually a well constructed story. If the ending feels exactly right, if it feels meat, like you knew from the beginning that this is where the story was headed, that's a good story, right? And you're enjoying the journey of it. There's this idea out there that like the ending is somehow supposed to be a surprise. And I suppose there's a very particular genre for that, like the people who love the twist ending that comes out of nowhere. But frankly, a lot of the times when it comes out of nowhere, it's because the author left you deliberately in the dark about it. Which is one way to do things, but also, I don't know, it's not how I do things. A friend of mine was reading Never the Roses and has been sending me occasional commentary about it, which I really enjoy. It's fun. But he commented that anyone who complains about the ending must not have been paying attention along the way because everything points to an ending that's at least bittersweet. And it's true. That's the ending that story had to have. And yeah, a few people have complained. I think it's a happy ending. I think it points to a happy ending. I understand why some people feel like it's not. But I also am fine with an open ended story. And I know not everybody is. There are people out there who want every little thing tied up and they want to know exactly what happened. And I'm okay with not knowing, with being able to imagine. I actually kind of like being able to fill in my own, this is what I think they did after it ended. But I understand not everyone does, which is why there are all kinds of books in the world. Um, yeah, so I have to write this ending. But I also, last night after I finished and I was drinking wine on the Magic Portal over at the Casita, which Kelly and I have decided is a Magic Portal because she finished her novel there too. No, I guess she finished her novel there, period. Uh, but yeah, I got an idea for for the romance in this book. And so I am going to have to backtrack a little bit. But I am going to be done by next week. I'd hope to be done today. Not quite going to happen. Uh, yeah. All right. So I am traveling this week on Monday, going to my mother's house in Tucson. So I may do a podcast on Tuesday. I may not. We'll see. See how I feel. I know a lot of times I don't. I might just get up early and go work on this book, depending on where I am. And then on Wednesday, we're driving back here. I'm bringing her back here to visit for a while. So that will be nice. All right. So if you are in the U.S., and I over-explained everything you already know about U.S. politics, I apologize. But if it is a long weekend for you, I hope you enjoy. Um, Try to enjoy everything you can. That's the other thing, is we can't be outraged and protesting every minute. Uh, we still have lives to lead, and you still deserve some rest and relaxation on what is considered to be our last hurrah of the summer. So go out there and hurrah. All right. You all take care. Bye bye.